Number 12. Amber Luke. We've all had bad hair days or days where the reflection in the mirror just doesn't seem good enough. Well, one Instagram model named Amber Luke took these feelings of inadequacy to the extreme by spending over $70,000 on tattoos and body modifications. She said she hated the way she looked growing up and that it was way too plain and boring. Amber wanted to stick out in the crowd instead of blending in like everyone else, and she can definitely do that now easily. After over 600 tattoos, including eye tattoos, her body is a living, walking piece of artwork. But that wasn't enough for her. She also had her tongue split, a boob job, Brazilian butt lift, surgery to make her ears look like a pixie's, and skin implants. The model has gotten a lot of hate for her appearance, but she doesn't seem to mind thanks to the help of over 100,000 supportive Instagram followers. In an interview with Insider, she said, "I feel it's so empowering to take ownership and control over your body. It is her body and her choice, even if her choices are extreme." Number 11. Stalking cat. Tigers are pretty majestic animals, but that doesn't mean humans should try and look like them. One man took his passion for the big cat way too far when he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to resemble a female tigress. He was known as the stalking cat. Born as Dennis Anver, he underwent countless surgeries and tattoos to achieve his desired look. He actually held the world record for most permanent transformations to look like an animal, and he often appeared on the television show Ripley's Believe It or Not. His procedures included facial subdermal implants to change his brow shape, nose flattening, silicone injections in multiple facial areas, splitting his lip, filing and sharpening his teeth to a point, surgically modifying his hairline, and changing his ear shape. Apart from surgery, he also wore green contacts with slit irises, and he often wore a robotic, tiger-like tail. Now that is commitment. I wonder what his favorite animal was. Sadly, the stalking cat died back in 2007, at 54 years young. His body was found alone in his garage, believed to be a suicide. Perhaps he realized his dream of turning into a tiger could never fully come true and decided to take the hard way out of life. Number 10. Rib removal. The typical human being has 3 floating ribs on either side of their rib cage. These bones are there to help protect vital organs inside your body, and removing them would risk damaging these crucial structures, despite knowing that humans are humans and some people are stupid. So you might ask, why would someone even do this? And the answer is just as vain and meaningless as you might think: to be skinnier. Yes, people actually remove body parts from themselves to appeal to some superficial societal beauty standards. But just how dangerous is this surgery? Well, when you remove your ribs, you risk excessive bleeding, nerve damage, shock to organs, poor muscle coordination, chronic pain, potential lung puncturing, and much, much more. Thankfully, rib removal surgery is illegal in many countries, including the US. But that still doesn't stop people. Some will go out of their home country and fly across the world just to get this done. To each their own, I guess, but we'll keep our ribs here, thank you very much. Number 9. Skin corset. Ever since their invention in the early 16th century, corsets have been intertwined in the history of female fashion, evolving into something pretty strange today. Yes, traditional corsets that go around the waist and are tightened to make the wearer look skinnier, well, they are still around. But the kind of corsets we're talking about today are anything but traditional. If you're a little queasy, you might want to mentally prepare yourself for what you're about to see. Skin corsets are slowly gaining more popularity from piercing and body modification fans. Yes, you heard that right. Skin corsets. In order to achieve this look, metal piercings are inserted into the skin of either the back thigh, rib cage, or wherever a person is crazy enough to get them. And then lace or ribbon is threaded through to get that signature corset look. As painful as it sounds, people usually go through all this trouble for temporary pleasure. Having so many piercings in such close range can damage the skin beyond repair. Yet people still do it because they think it looks cool. And it does if you're into that kind of thing. Number 8. Genital beading. In case you thought these vanity procedures couldn't get any worse, genital beading has been waiting for its spot on this list. Also known as pearling, this practice is rooted in a long history. It's most commonly known from the Japanese Yakuza's use. For every year in prison one of their members has served, the Yakuza would input another bead into the shaft of the member's penis. It's also been seen in Chinese and Philippine history for the sexual pleasure of female partners, or as a sort of strange symbol of power. Today, the procedure is still done for the intended purpose. While a sexual partner may enjoy being on the receiving end, there's no doubt this is an incredibly painful process for the man who decides to undergo it. Due to blood flow in the genitals, the healing time can vary, but often takes quite a while before certain uses are possible again. No disrespect to those who get genital beading done for religious or cultural purposes, but why would anyone else in their right mind want a penis that looks like it had bubbles all over it? Well, I'll never know. Number 7. Tongue splitting. We only have 5 senses: hearing, smelling, seeing, touching, and tasting. So imagine taking a body part specifically designed for one of these basic functions and drastically changing it. The tongue has multiple uses besides tasting, of course. It helps us with speech and language too, but some people simply don't like the look of it. You've heard of tongue piercings, but have you ever heard of tongue splitting? The practice of tongue splitting quite literally involves cutting the tongue in half so there's 2 sides to it. It's done for multiple reasons: aesthetic, sexual, etc., and it's very dangerous. Those who undergo the procedure could potentially bleed out, get infections, have breathing or swallowing problems, and even nerve damage is a risk. According to the Royal College of Surgeons, over half of the people who get their tongues split experience some kind of complication. Over half. Surgeon Patrick McGuinness says this: although skin can be cleaned with antiseptic before piercings, the mouth cannot be cleaned in the same way. The risks are so obvious, yet people still alter their bodies because they think it'll look cool. So it might be best to stop warning and let natural selection just kind of do its job. How do you think it would feel to kiss a person with a split tongue? If you ever have, let us know in the comments section down below. Number 6. Flesh tunnels, Joel Migler. Joel Migler is what you would consider a body artist. He's been experimenting and changing up his body since the ripe age of 13. Originally from Germany, the man has 27 separate piercings on his body, an implant, tongue-splitting procedure, and even a buttock branding. But arguably his most shocking alteration is his flesh tunnels. I'm just sorry I even have to say that in a sentence. Joel's flesh tunnels are holes in both of his cheeks that expose the back half of his jaw and teeth. They're about 40 millimeters in diameter, and he's even able to stick his tongue out through them. He claims they don't really affect his daily life other than the looks he gets from strangers, and maybe making teeth brushing a little bit easier. Even his mother is supportive of his decisions, which is kind of beyond surprising. People claim the man looks like a living zombie, and we might just have to agree with them. Number 5. Skull implants. Have you ever wanted to be a unicorn? Have you ever wanted some metal spikes like Frankenstein? Well, the inner child and sicko in you may just be in luck with this new revolutionary body mod. Introducing skull implants for all your headbanging and unicorn needs. Okay, in all seriousness though, it's now possible to get literal implants embedded into your skull. Sometimes this is done for medical reasons, but more common than you might think, body mod fans have been getting things put into their heads to last a lifetime. Now, this bone surrounding your head is specifically designed to protect the most vital organ in the human body. And someone saw it and said, hey, wouldn't it be sick if we put a spike on that? And that's exactly what some people do. Now, it does make sense that most of the so-called professionals doing these procedures aren't fully qualified to do them. Because what sane doctor would risk that lawsuit waiting to happen? People have gotten anything from spikes to horns put in and love the way they look afterwards. So really, who are we to judge? Number 4. Cindy Moore. If you haven't figured it out by now, people are obsessed with the way they look. They'll go to extremes just to be attractive, and that includes our next entry, Cindy Moore. Cindy was your average middle-aged mom doing her best to raise her 2 children. But everything changed after she discovered her fiancé was having an affair. After finding out the heartbreaking news, Cindy kinda snapped. She spent 10,000 pounds to turn herself into an image of a living sex doll. Some procedures she underwent included a breast enlargement, 3 separate lip fillers, and hair extensions. She's in love with her new look, but says moms at her children's school bully her for it. In response, she said in an interview, "Sex doll persona has been created on social media because of my look, but I'm just a normal protective mom who works hard for my children." A sweet message, but it's still pretty wild to spend 10,000 pounds to change your whole appearance and not expect a few side eyes. Number 3. Subdermal skin implants. This next entry is similar to the skull implants, just on other areas of the body. Sometimes a piercing just doesn't cut it for body modification enthusiasts. They crave something a little more extreme. That's where subdermal skin implants come in. Have you ever looked at your arm and wished there was a bit more texture there? If you said no, don't worry, you're normal. The people who said yes, well, it's a good thing you clicked on this video. Most commonly, these subdermal implants are made of Teflon or silicone to last many years under the skin. To insert it, a spatula-type instrument is used to hollow out the desired portion of skin, allowing whatever item you've chosen to be stuffed inside. The implants are often shaped in a specific way, and you could get whatever you want, really. A star, heart, horseshoe, little alien, smiley face, the possibilities are kind of endless. Just make sure you take care of your skin afterwards, otherwise it's gonna feel like the worst splinter you've ever had. Imagine someone getting a spider-shaped implant under their skin. Yikes! Would you ever do this? And what would you get? Number 2. Eyeball jewelry. Most people are fans of jewelry. Giving out necklaces, bracelets, and especially rings is common practice. But did you know eyeball jewelry was a thing? Apparently so. Medically referred to as an extraocular implant, this surgery involves a tiny piece of decorative material being embedded into the outermost post of the eye. This all started in the Netherlands around 2002 and has since continued to gain popularity for its striking look. No pun intended. Shapes of the implant include hearts, musical notes, moons, stars, and whatever else the heart desires. Despite the procedure's rising fame, the FDA has warned against putting foreign objects into the eye, for very obvious reasons. Just like everything else on this list, extraocular implants may look interesting, but before getting one, just stop and use a little common sense first. Maybe having a cool-looking eye isn't worth possibly going blind. But hey, if that happens, at least you won't have to worry about looks anymore. Number 1. Branding. Branding is common practice among farmers for keeping track of their animals. But did you know that some people will voluntarily get branded themselves? It's an extremely dangerous process that takes heated metallic rods and then presses them firmly against the skin. Sometimes the rods are even dragged to make patterns. Third-degree burns result from the extreme heat contact, and the resulting scarring is what most people are after. If done correctly, it can almost look like a 3D tattoo, but it's not without risk. Branding can result in obvious extreme pain, and if not treated correctly after being done, can cause skin infections. This doesn't stop people from doing it though. If you for some god-awful reason decide to get this done, please take care of the wound, and maybe see a therapist, because who knows what's going on in your head. This story takes fatherly love to a whole new level. In 2008, the world was shocked to learn about the chilling life of Austrian native Elisabeth Fritzl, who spent 24 years trapped in a basement prison by her own father. It all began when her dad asked for her help fixing up a door in the cellar. Little did she know that the very same cellar would be her living nightmare for years to come. While in captivity, Elisabeth was victim to sexual assault over and over again and abused thousands of times. With no access to medical care of any kind and only a pair of kitchen scissors, she gave birth to 7 children in the dark, damp basement. Elisabeth's father, Josef Fritzl, covered up his crimes for decades by pretending his daughter had run away and joined a cult. After the birth of the children, he left 3 of them with Elisabeth below his house, while taking the others and raising them above ground. He had Elisabeth write letters to her mother, saying she was completely fine, just unable to raise the kids and begging her to take care of them. Sadly, one of the children died in Elisabeth's arms just hours after it was born. To cover up the death, the monster Josef incinerated the baby's body. In some twisted act of goodwill, one day when the oldest child in the cellar got sick, Josef took her to the doctor for the first time in her 19 years of life. Police were concerned with her state of health and demanded the mother of the poor child be contacted. Reluctantly, Josef drove Elisabeth to the hospital, claiming she had finally been released from the cult. After getting her alone, the police were horrified to hear the shocking truth. Thankfully, Elisabeth never had to see her father again, and she's now living safely. Meanwhile, her devil of a father is behind bars for life. Frankly, we think his punishment should be a bit more severe. What do you think? Number 7. Megan Huntsman. It takes a special kind of evil to hurt a child, and an even more sinister evil to kill your own flesh and blood. But one Utah mother defied nature and love after killing multiples of her very own newborns. Megan Huntsman was your average suburban mother of 3, living in Pleasant Grove, Utah. Her life seemed perfectly normal on paper, loving husband, great kids, nothing out of the ordinary. But one day her partner, Darren West, was cleaning out their garage when he found a small white box. Curious about what could possibly be inside, he opened it in horror and found the tiny, rotting body of a newborn baby. Like any sane person, Darren immediately called the cops to investigate his findings. The cops tore up the garage and found 6 more babies stashed in similar-looking boxes. There was only one other person who could be responsible: Megan. Apparently for 10 years, she'd been giving birth and instantly killing the babies right after. She claimed that she had killed them since they were going to be too expensive. Megan and Darren were secretly meth addicts at the time, and Megan firmly believed carrying these children to term, giving birth, killing them after, and stashing their bodies was easier than simply using birth control or a condom. She said the only reason she didn't do the same with her living children was because people knew about the pregnancies. Truly sick and disgusting. Darren claimed he was so messed up on drugs at the time that he had no idea the kind of evil his wife was doing. Thankfully, she'd be spending the rest of her life in prison. Just remember, meth not even once. Number 6. Colleen Ritzer. Everyone has had a bad experience with a teacher. It's just a rite of passage for people who've been to a school. But most of us don't really do anything to lash out at the teacher after it's happened. Sadly, this wasn't the case for one unfortunate math instructor. Colleen Ritzer was new to teaching. She just recently graduated college and started her work at Danvers High School. She instantly became a favorite among the students and staff for her positive personality and strong work ethic. Colleen really wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. She would often stay after school for hours to tutor students who needed a little extra help. With her ever so helpful frame of mind, she invited one student, 14-year-old Philip Chisholm, to stay and talk after class. Colleen had noticed Philip was struggling making friends and connecting with others after recently moving to the area. Reports from other student witnesses say he got upset when she asked about or mentioned Tennessee, the state Philip had moved from. Investigators think this triggered memories of the divorce of his parents and could have been his motive. On October 22, 2013, at around 3 o'clock, Colleen headed out of her classroom to use the bathroom. Moments later, Philip is seen on security cameras walking towards her with his hood up, covering the majority of his face. In the bathroom, the young man slashed his teacher's throat 16 times with a sharp box cutter before savagely sexually assaulting her. He was then filmed leaving the room with blood-soaked hands, only to return in different outfit 10 minutes later, wheeling a green recycling bin. He used the bin to move Colleen's body outside before dumping it, shoving a tree branch into her corpse, and posing it in a provocative manner. Philip showed no remorse whatsoever, and he was later charged and sentenced to 40 years in prison. It's truly disgusting to know what some people are capable of. Do you think 40 years is enough prison time for Philip? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. DENA SCHLOSSER. It's not surprising to hear that some mothers will do anything for their children, even if it's some messed up form of mutilating care. DENA SCHLOSSER was a loving wife and stay-at-home mother of 2 from Texas. Her husband John made good money as a software designer, but was sadly let go, which led to the couple losing their house. In their vulnerable state, the Schlossers turned to a higher power at the Water of Life Church. DENA had become obsessed with the pastor of the church, Doyle Davidson, and their teachings. The Water of Life Church preached that Jezebel spirits had taken over their town's women and were working to entice men. They thought prayer was the answer to everything and medicine was part of the devil's work. Soon after converting to their new faith, DENA became pregnant. She gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, in their home with the help of a midwife. She claimed the boy died during birth, and without proper medical attention, DENA experienced severe mental health struggles due to postpartum depression. She even attempted to end her life by slitting her wrists, but her husband found her before it was too late. Her mental condition and ability to reason was abysmal. She was so obsessed with Pastor Davidson that she dressed her newborn baby up in white and asked him to marry her child to bring it closer to God. Later, she told her husband John that she wanted to give the baby to God himself. John didn't think much of it, but the very next morning, DENA went into her kitchen, found the biggest knife in the room, and did the unthinkable. She tried to cut off the child's arms, killing the baby in the process. The police later found her calm as a cucumber, sitting in a bloody mess, singing hymns to herself. While in custody, she's quoted repeating to herself, "Thank you, Jesus, thank you, Lord." Sorry, but I don't think Jesus had anything to do with this one. Number 4. JUNKO FURATA. This next story may be hard for some people to hear. A young Japanese girl named JUNKO FURATA experienced a living hell. JUNKO was a pretty, well-mannered girl who didn't drink or smoke, which sadly didn't make her very popular in some crowds. One of her peers, who was a bit of a gangster named Hiroshi Miyano, approached her, saying he had a crush on her but didn't want a serious relationship. Turning him down for obvious reasons, JUNKO went about her day. But little did she know, Miyano wasn't going to take no for an answer. A few days after the rejection, Miyano and 3 other teenage boys kidnapped JUNKO, taking her to one of their houses. After taking her, they made her call her parents and lie, saying she was running away. The parents of the boy whose house JUNKO was being kept in eventually caught on that something was wrong, but chose to do nothing in fear of Miyano's Yakuza connections. Over the 44 days JUNKO was held, she was subjected to brutal torture. It got to the point that JUNKO was begging for death. After all this torture, the boys finally took her life by pouring lighter fluid all over her body and setting her aflame. She soon died from shock. The sociopaths dumped her body in a 55-gallon concrete-filled drum in Tokyo. JUNKO was taken too early and deserves all the respect in the world for dealing with the torture she endured. Number 3. TURPIN family. You may remember hearing about the TURPIN family in the news a few years ago, but you probably don't know just how brutal the case was. The Turpins had 13 children, yes 13. And back in 2018, the world was shocked to discover the abuse and neglect these poor children suffered at the hands of their own mother and father, the very people meant to protect them. David and Louise Turpin reportedly kept the kids homebound for years, hardly ever letting them venture outside. Neighbors claimed that whenever they did see the children, they could only remember how pale and skinny they looked. The kids were fed once per day and were only granted permission to bathe once in an entire year. After years of this treatment, one daughter was able to escape and ask for help. The 17-year-old jumped out of an open window and called 911 on the first phone she could get her hands on and begged the police to save her siblings. The condition of the Turpin children was so bad that apparently one of them was a 29-year-old woman, but you could hardly tell based on how severely underfed and sickly she was, weighing only 82 pounds. Inside the home the children were kept, the house was a mess, with boxes of junk everywhere and dirty windows revealing stacks of diapers. In their previous home, the Turpins left the carpets covered in filth, the doors littered with scratches and mysterious marks. It's been revealed that the mother, Louise, was a victim of sexual assault in her youth. Supposedly, her mother would often rent her out to older gentlemen. And while this crime is in itself terrible, it doesn't justify the way she treated and locked up her own children. The husband and wife criminal duo were given 25 years to life for their extreme case of neglect. Number 2. Oleg Sokolov. In 2019, a Russian professor named Oleg Sokolov was found in a river by authorities. They were more than surprised by what they found inside the man's backpack, a woman's arm. Upon further investigation upstream, the police found more body parts of a 24-year-old woman named Anastasia Yashchenko, who had been living with the professor before her death. The investigation into the killing was short, as Oleg admitted to shooting his former student 4 times. After she was dead, he used a kitchen knife and a saw to cut her body into smaller pieces that he could fit into backpacks and then dispose of. Oleg was a famous history teacher and had received awards for his research papers and Napoleonic reenactments. The young woman, Anastasia, would help him with his work, and they soon developed a deeper personal relationship. He claimed that she was wildly jealous of his children he'd had from a past relationship, and that she attacked him with a knife. Not many people believe these claims, though, since many women at the university he taught at had complained about his behavior before, but no actions were taken. He said his plan was to dispose of Anastasia's body, then kill himself in a public place while dressed as his idol Napoleon. The man was delusional to say the least, and just like Napoleon, came up a little too short of his intended goals. Number 1. ANATOLY MOSKVIN, Living Dolls. Our last story looks at yet another disturbing historian from Russia. Anatoly Moskvin robbed the graves of over 29 girls. He took the bodies of these poor little girls and turned them into dolls, going so far as dressing them up and putting makeup on their faces. And as if this is any consolation, he took extremely good care of his beloved dolls, even knowing the birthdays of each one and celebrating them once the time came. No one knew what he was up to. He literally lived in the same apartment as his parents, and they had no clue. They just thought he was into collecting creepy life-size dolls. They did complain of a strong smell coming from his bedroom though, but for some reason they didn't really think to look into it. In MOSKVIN's mind, he was doing the right thing. He thought that the parents of the girls had discarded them in death, and he was taking good care of them. He's quoted saying, "You abandoned your girls in the cold and I brought them home and warmed them up." After being evaluated by professionals, MOSKVIN was found to have a severe form of paranoid schizophrenia. Since the discovery of the life-size dolls, the parents of the girls have called for MOSKVIN to serve life in prison, some even wanting him to be put to death. But ever since 2012, he's been held in a psychiatric hospital, which is honestly probably the best place for him. Picture this, it's the holiday season in Spain, and to celebrate the holly jolly time, they host a very special lottery called the El Gordo. We hope that you know what that means in Spanish. Here's a hint. It means fat. Anyway, it's a massive event, and during this particular year, the value of the lottery itself was a whopping $950 million. And people were pretty excited. Whoever the lucky winner was going to be, their lives would be forever changed. But in the small village of Sodeto, 99% of all the households bought a ticket. And all the tickets they bought had the same number. That way they could share the wealth. Sure enough, their number was drawn. And the village got to share in the near billion-dollar winnings. So you might be thinking, who was that 1% that didn't get a ticket? Well, that silly man would be Kostas Mitsotakis. Now, before you judge him and say, well, he was a fool for not getting a ticket, it's not that easy. You see, the homeowners association in that village was the one that sold the tickets. And for El Gordo, they went door to door in order to sell them, but forgot to knock on Mitsotakis' door. He was forgotten, and he lost a lot of potential money as a result. What a bummer. Number 9. Roy Sullivan. 7 is supposed to be a lucky number, but for park ranger Roy Sullivan, it was a number that showed just how unlucky he was throughout his life. For 7 is the amount of times that he himself was struck by lightning. Yes, really. You might know of someone who was struck by lightning and lived because they only got struck once. But this guy got struck 7 different times and survived each one of them. That's not supposed to happen, and yet it did. This wasn't all in a small period of time either, and not all in the same place. He was struck 7 times between the years 1942 and 1977. That's 35 years of potential strikes by lightning, and yet, the odds of this happening to one guy in a lifetime, well, they're astronomical. So much so that it would be fair to call it impossible, yet it happened to Roy Sullivan. Just as odd as his getting struck 7 times was where he was when he was zapped. One time he got struck while inside of his truck. Another time came when he was inside his park ranger station. Twice he swore that clouds were following him. And over the years he lost eyebrows, his hair went ablaze, he suffered numerous burns, and even damage to his hearing. The last of these occurred after he'd quit the park service. He was on his boat fishing. He got hit with the supercharged bolt, lived, and then found himself face to face with a bear that wanted the fish he had just caught. For the record, he survived the bear fight as well as the lightning bolts. But one cannot look at Roy Sullivan and not think, what did nature have against this guy? We honestly don't have an answer to that. Number 8. Henry ZIEGLAND. This next story is pretty tragic. You've been warned. Texan Henry ZIEGLAND broke his fiancé's heart by calling off their engagement. And she was so distraught that she decided to take her own life. So this is already a tragedy on multiple levels. But that's just the beginning of this tale. There are a couple twists left to be had here. Her brother made his way onto Henry's land and shot him, before using the second round in the chamber on himself. Little did he know the first bullet had merely grazed the side of Henry's head, shooting off into the woodland behind him. No, his missing wasn't the unlucky part, or at least not the true unlucky part. There's still more to go here. 20 years later, Henry was working on his land and trying to remove some trees, but it wasn't going as planned. One was resisting him mightily. So he blew it up with TNT, and he watched as it detonated. Which, for the record, is always a dumb thing to do because TNT isn't exactly safe. Sure enough, the bullet that was still in that tree launched out at high speeds and killed him. Yes, the very bullet that his ex's brother fired 20 years previous was in that tree, and it killed him because of the explosion. That's not just a case of bad luck, but a case of karma coming full circle. Number 7. Yu Zhenhuan. So far, we've shown you people that have had bad luck in terms of bad or unfortunate things happening to them from an external source. In the case of Yu Zhenhuan, his bad luck was literally found within himself, because Yu had a very serious genetic condition that made him the literal hairiest man in the world. Now naturally, both men and women have hair on their bodies in various lengths and densities. From the hair on your head, to your face, to your arms and legs, it can grow and show itself depending on your body type and genetic makeup. But for you, 96% of his body was covered in hair, which was bad not just in terms of his physical appearance, but it actually would hinder him in other ways. In one case, he had to have surgery in order to remove the hair from his ears because it was affecting his hearing. Black fuzz covers every part of his frame besides the palms of his hands and the soles of his feet. He's covered with an average of 41 hairs per square centimeter of his skin. Doctors call this condition atavism, and he's not exactly the luckiest guy in that department, so naturally people would be a bit put off by someone like you. He's had to live his life as a bit of an outcast, poor guy. But he's also learned to try and make the most of his situation by posting pictures online and trying to become a rock star. So would you go to U's concert? Let us know in the comments section down below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Melanie Martinez. Natural disasters can ruin lives. We really have no defense against them though, because they're natural. We can't fight Mother Nature. She can wreck homes, destroy lives, and uproot families in the worst of ways. And for Melanie Martinez, she has suffered through that so many times that she was dubbed the unluckiest woman in America. To put that title on her is a pretty bold thing given how unlucky people can be at times. So what did she have happen to her, in the natural disaster sense, to earn that rank? Simply put, she was part of 4 different hurricanes, and all 4 wiped out her homes. Betsy in 1965, Juan in 1985, George in 1998, and Katrina in 2005. Let's pause and think about that for a second, because that means this woman and her family were all part of a horrifying experience. And every single time she found herself uprooted and basically having to start life all over again. Sadly, her luck wasn't about to change. After Katrina, her story got out and she had a custom home made for her and her family. Martinez reveled in it and was so happy. Then Hurricane Isaac came around and once again wiped out her home. Now I've lost 5 houses to 5 storms, every time a wipeout. The only thing that was lucky was that despite losing her house every time, her family and her pets were always safe. Number 5. Calamity John Lynn. You know you have to be an unlucky person if your nickname is Calamity, and sure enough, John Lynn is known as Britain's unluckiest man. So what did he do to get named this special title? How about suffering 16 major accidents in his life, including lightning strikes, a rock slide while in a mine, and 3 car crashes? Also, this one time, and we swear we are not making this up, there was a catapult that fired a rock that literally hit John on the mouth and knocked out some of his teeth. It actually traced this man's bad luck to his youngest of days. As a child, he had underdeveloped lungs, and many weren't sure he was going to live. He once drank a bottle of disinfectant and had to be taken to the hospital to save his life. And on one Friday the 13th, he broke his arm falling out of a tree, got fixed up at the hospital, was driving home on a bus when it got into an accident, and he broke that same arm again. As Murphy's Law states, anything that can happen will happen. And there should be an amendment that states, especially if your name is John Lynn. Number 4. Didi Koswara. The tale of Didi Koswara is quite honestly more of a horror story than a simple story of bad luck, because his life was going fine until one day he scraped his knee near some trees in his homeland of Indonesia. He was 10 years old at the time, and his life was changed forever in the worst way because of what was about to happen to him. Due to what got into that opened wound, he started to break out, but not with pimples or zits, but warts that were very tree-like. It seemed like he was full-on growing tree branches out of his feet. The pain was one thing, but the looks he got was another. It was so bad that he lost just about everything and had to join a circus as the tree man in order to make money. But wait, there's more. Because in 2012, Didi had surgery on his feet and legs. Over 13 pounds of warts were removed from him, which you would think would be the end of his tragic tale. But it wasn't. They grew back in record time. Number 3. Tsutomu Yamaguchi. There are certain moments in history where you want to be there in order to say, I was there when this happened. But for Samoto Yamaguchi, he was around for 2 separate moments that he probably wishes he wasn't. Why is that? Because the 2 places he was at were Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, when America went and dropped the atomic bombs in World War II. First was Hiroshima, where Yamaguchi visited the city and had literally just gotten off of a train when the first explosion hit. He He was knocked out and severely burned on certain parts of his body, but he did live. The next day, after being healed up a bit, he took the train home to Nagasaki. Sure enough, the next bomb came and he was once again caught up in the blast. He's a world record holder for the only person that we know of to have survived both of those blasts. He was almost totally deaf in one ear, and his skin wounds were bandaged for 12 years. His wife was poisoned from the radioactive fallout, and sadly, she died of kidney and liver cancers in 2008. Their son, who was exposed to the Nagasaki radiation at 6 months old, died in 2005 at age 59. Before dying from stomach cancer, Yamaguchi became a passionate anti-nuclear weapons campaigner, and it's kinda easy to see why. Number 2. The sinkhole. Sinkholes can literally appear out of nowhere and with no warning, and something always seems to sink into them. If you happen to be nearby, it's just really, really bad luck, especially if you live in Florida. Entire homes and hotels are disappearing with absolutely no warning. But this time it was in Colorado. Earlier this year, a shiny new fire truck and the crew inside were the victims. Now, if you're curious how this happened, so were the firefighters who barely escaped with their lives. When they were out on a call ready to put out a fire, the street began to sink under the truck. Lieutenant Brian Ebmeyer with the Colorado Springs Fire Department said that all 4 of the guys were in the engine when it began to sink. As soon as they realized what was happening, the men jumped out, not knowing what was really happening. Before they knew it, the truck had collapsed inside an enormous sinkhole, and they were lucky to be alive. The truck fell into the hole, and it took 2 powerful vehicles to pull it out. And one has to sympathize with the firehouse because they had just gotten that truck. Oh, and on top of it, the 4 a.m. fire call was a false alarm. Number 1. Miss Unsinkable. One of the most common kinds of unlucky people are those who were at the wrong place at the wrong time. And Violet Jessup was definitely a lady who had that outstanding ability, as she showed it quite often when it came to ships. Jessup was a stewardess and a nurse on a ship. The catch was that this ship was the Olympic, which sank after hitting another ship. She survived, so that part was lucky. But she was about to have a repeat experience twice over. We say that because she was later stationed on the Britannic, which hit a sea mine and sank, but she survived again. Finally, she was on the Titanic when it sank, and she survived this as well, which honestly was lucky because a lot of people didn't. After word got out that she had been a part of 3 boats going down, she earned the nickname Miss Unsinkable. But think about this on a grand scale. She not only survived 3 shipwrecks, they were all sister ships. She was put on these ships and they all sank. Superstitious people would no doubt hear this tale and not want to be on any boat that she was on, and we can't really blame them for that. Thanks for watching. What do you think of these super unlucky people? What's the worst or best luck you've ever experienced? Do you believe in luck? Let us know in the comments section down below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. See you next time.